WhatsApp also, but WhatsApp is limited to 8 people, no? 4 or 8 people.
There's a new app now, Google Meet.
Google Meet, yeah, that's what it says.
That's 100 people. And it's 60 minutes.
Yeah, it's 60 minutes.
Google Meet.
Google Meet.
Okay, so we're in page 75. אמר רב, המותח חוט של תפירה בשבת. If somebody sewed there's the thread of the stitches, and if he just מותח, he stretches the. I'm sorry, I skipped it right. אמר רב זוטרא בר טוביה אמר רב, המותח חוט של תפירה בשבת חייב חטאת. He's basically finishing the sewing by stretching that thread. That's what like mafkeh patish. Here is liable for sewing. That's the punchline of the sewing. He said three things he heard from his teacher. This was one. והלומד דבר אחד מן המגוש חייב מיתה. Whoever learns one thing from a magosh, which the Gemara will soon define, is liable to death. והיודע לחשב תקופות ומזלות. If a person knows how to calculate the seasons and the constellations, ואינו מחשב and he does not calculate, אסור לספר ממנו, don't talk to him. He's missing something very important. Okay, these are the three things. The first one is self-explanatory. The other two, the Gemara now explains, magushta, that magush, that from whom there's a prohibition to learn even one thing. Rav and Shmuel argue what that is. Chad amar charashi. One says it's witchcraft, sorcerer. V'chad amar gidufi. That's a heretic.
Yes, heretic.
Blasphemer. Yeah. Blasphemer. And now who said what? Rav and Shmuel. Tistayem, we can prove the Rav, the Amar Gidufi. Rav spoke about the blasphemer. The Amar Rav Zutra bar Tuvia Amar Rav, halomed davar echad min hamagosh chayav mita. Even if one learns from him one thing, is liable to death. So that cannot be a sorcerer, because from a sorcerer, one is permitted to learn a few things. The prohibition is to learn how to practice the sorcery. There is a permission to learn just to understand what sorcery is about. So Tistayim, that's a proof that Rav, who said that there's even a prohibition to learn even one thing from this Amgusha, obviously meant a blasphemer from whom you have to distance yourself.
They call it heretic.
Heretic, yeah. Yeah, blasphemer, heretic, renegade. Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to add that the Rambam said that he learned all the Avodah Zarah books. He said there wasn't one Avodah Zarah book.
He did not know.
That said he learned the also Kishuv and Avodah Zarah. I think we learned somewhere else that you can learn Kishuv in order to know how to judge people.
Yeah, that's what it says here. Le'avinu le'orot. You're permitted to learn in order to understand and to rule.
And the problem is to learn Kishuv in order to do it yourself.
Right. But also, who you learn from. If you learn from a blasphemer, you should distance yourself from it. You shouldn't even learn one thing from him. From a sorcerer, you can learn the practice of Kishuf. Kesem is like magic.
Yes.
Kisuf is like sorcery or witchcraft.
It's just a trick of the Kesem is a trick of the eyes.
Yeah.
Like the card trick.
Okay.
That's magic.
And what's witchcraft?
That's not witchcraft.
No, witchcraft.
That's what a conjurer does.
So that's a dispute. If it's a true thing, so that's a big dispute. If this witchcraft and sorcery, is there such a thing or not? Is it an illusion or just or a real thing? Okay, and then the other thing, Amar Rabbi Shimon ben Pazi, Amar Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi, Mishum bar Kapara. Anyone who knows, who has the knowledge to calculate the seasons and the constellations, and Rashi says that the one who knows that can tell the future. He can tell if the year will be rainy or dry, and you can tell those who know, they could tell. So if somebody knows that, ואינו חושב and he does not calculate, עליו הכתוב אומר, ואת פועל השם לא יביטו, ומעשה ידיו לא ראו. Because it would be a kiddush Hashem to publicize that from the Torah you can even learn these things.
It's also so important to know that you calculate it.
No, it's not the calendar. It's something. This is something else. It's not the calendar. It's the seasons of the year. When will it rain? When will it be dry? Each one will say different thing. Could be.
It's a magazine or publication called the Farmer's Almanac. But the Farmer's Almanac went on for 100 years. I don't know if it's still up or not.
And what do they publicize?
They predict the weather.
The weather.
They predict the weather.
And how accurate were they?
Quite accurate.
Interesting. אוקיי, אמר רבי שמואל בר נחמני, אמר רבי יונתן, מניין שמצווה על האדם לחשב תקופות המזלות, how do you know that it's a mitzvah? Whoever is able to calculate these seasons and constellations, שנאמר ושמרתם ועשיתם, כי היא חוכמתכם ובינתכם, this is your wisdom and understanding, לעיני העמים. איזו חוכמה ובינה שהיא לעיני העמים, what kind of wisdom is to the eyes of the nations, הווי אומר, זה חישוב תקופות המזלות. Even though the Mishnah in Avot only calls it parperaot la Torah, kufot vegimatriot, parperaot, it's like a dessert, like a small thing in Torah. But even that is significant to publish to the Kiddush Hashem. Okay, now back to the labors on Shabbat. Atzad tzvi, so one labor is hunting. Tanura banan, atzad chilazon, if one hunts the chilazon. Chilazon is the name in English?
Yeah,
right. The blood is used to make the color. The color. Okay, so if one hunts that, how do you call it? In the water, right? But it sometimes comes up from the sea and you can hunt it. It's huntable. Okay, but it's still a labor on Shabbat to hunt. Even if you're a snail, you can hunt on Shabbat. It's a labor of hunting.
It's not exactly hunting it.
No. Anything you catch, any creature you catch, is hunting on Shabbat. It's classified in this labor of hunting. Trapping, hunting. So atzad chilazon ve'apotzo. Now there's a dispute. If one potzo means it squeezes it to extract its blood. So is that a labor or not a labor? Right. That's a dispute if it's one is liable or not liable for that. According to the sages, Tanakama, eino chayav ela achat. There's no liability for squeezing the chilazon, only for hunting it, for trapping it. So the Gemara soon asks that. Rabbi Yehuda Omer chayav shtayim. Rabbi Yehuda says there's two separate liabilities, one for trapping it and one for squeezing it and extracting its blood. Shaya Rabbi Yehuda Omer ptzi'a bichlal disha. Squeezing this chilazon is part of the labor of threshing. It's like threshing, just like one who threshes separates the husk, the shell. So anything you extract from something else is that labor of threshing, squeezing. So the Gemara will soon ask that. What about killing it? Of course, that's a basic question. So, but before we have to explain the sages, why do they say that there's no liability for squeezing it? They told him no, squeezing is not included in the labor of threshing. So what's the reason? Apparently it's exactly the same act. To extract one thing from another is like that's the concept of threshing. So kasavrei en disha ela legidulei karka. They hold that labor only applies to something that grows from the ground, not to living creatures. Okay. And now comes the obvious question: how come if one squeezes chilazon and obviously kills it, how come he's not liable for taking its life? I mean, in the Mishnah we have a shochet, the labor of slaughtering. The essence is taking life. That's also a labor forbidden on Shabbat. They needed it because they needed the hides of Tchashim, Eilim Adamim, the red rams. So they had to kill some animals for that. So how come here one who squeezes this chilazon is not liable for that? The answer is two answers. One answer is Amar Rabbi Yochanan shepsa'omet. Indeed, if one squeezes such a chilazon and by squeezing it he kills it, is liable for killing it as well. But the Braita spoke about a person who just squeezed it after it was already dead. It's a dead chilazon. There's no liability for killing it. There's still liability for extracting its blood, according to Rabbi Yehuda, from the dead chilazon. But Rava Amar, no, even if he squeezed it when it was still alive, there's no liability for killing it because mit'aseku etzel netilat neshama. He's not interested in that, in taking its life. Oh, so that's a good question. Even though he's not intending to kill it, but unavoidably it's going to happen. So why is he not liable? So that's the Gemara is asking. Even if you do not intend to do something, but if the act you do unavoidably will cause that, so you should be liable. But here the answer is he's not interested. He actually is interested for it to stay as much as possible alive. Why? Because the color that you can produce from its blood is clearer as long as it stays more alive. So,
but why would you want to do that on Shabbos? What does he want the blood for on Shabbos?
Obviously not. But if he's not religious,
Sitters to be blue.
he sells it to others.
If he wants to see Shabbat without the Shabbat, if he forgets the Shabbat or forgets that this is a malacha,
Precisely.
he's walking down the beach.
He knows it's a store of Shabbat, whether he's tired. He doesn't. He knows it's Shabbat, but he doesn't know
It's forbidden. Oh, right. That's sugar, right? Or he does not know it's forbidden, right? I think I understood that it's one time. It's like it cannot revive itself. Once you extract its blood, it cannot live. That's how I understand it. That's why.
give it a blood transfusion.
Yeah, give it a transfusion is not so so feasible in Childanot, I guess. Okay, that's shochato, the one who slaughters. Now shochet mishum mayichayav. The question now is, what's the essence of this labor of slaughtering? Rashi says, why did they need to slaughter? They needed the hides of the red rams, but why did they need to slaughter them? They could strangle them and kill them and take the hides. So what's the essence of the labor of slaughtering?
Maybe because they wanted to have the meat at the same time.
To eat the meat.
Sure.
Could be, but now there's a dispute. Now Rav shochet mishum chayav. Rav amar mishum tzovea. Rav says that the slaughterer is liable on account of dying, and the Gemara will soon explain this. But obviously, Tosfot explained that Rav is not referring to the shochet that appears in the Mishnah. In the Mishnah, we cannot say that shochet, one of the 39 labors, is dying because that labor appears there also. Shochet v'atzovea, they both appear in the Mishnah. So obviously, the Mishnah means that shochet is liable, as Shmuel says, Shmuel amar mishum netilat neshama. That's the essence of this labor. That's unanimous. All agree that one who slaughters is liable on account of taking life. That's a labor forbidden on Shabbat. Oh, exactly. So Rav will soon explain this. And now, first of all, the Gemara is asking on Rav, Mishum tzovea in Mishum netilat neshama lo, is he only liable on account of tzovea and not on account of taking life? Obviously, that's the basic thing in Shchita. Okay, so Ema, af Mishum tzovea, that's the point of dispute. Shmuel says that one who slaughters is only liable to one chatat on account of taking life. Rav says that there are two liabilities involved in slaughtering, Shchita and tzovea. And now Rav explained himself, and that's very interesting. I think it's like kind of a prophecy. Because it says, Amar Rav, Milta de Amre, the thing I said, Ema ba Milta, I want to say something about this, the lo leitu darei batrai, so that the later future generations will not come and not mock me, and not laugh at me. Now, you have to explain why is a slaughterer considered tzovea? Says tzovea b'may nichale. Nicha de litvas beit hashchita. He's interested that the place of the incision, the place of the shchita, will be soiled with blood. How? Soaked in blood. So that people will see it, so people will see it and come and buy it from him. They can see that it's fresh meat. It was slaughtered today. So it was only relevant in his time when the slaughterers were also the sellers of the meat. So they wanted to show that this is fresh meat. Nowadays, maybe he referred to our generation. He said nowadays we can't understand. Why would the slaughterer be interested in dyeing the place of incision? Because now the slaughterer is one person and the seller is another person. It's not. He doesn't care. But in those times, the slaughterer, who was also the seller of the meat, was interested in showing that it's fresh meat. So he's interested in that.
More concerned about the fact that the blood comes out might soil the hide, and therefore would be worth less. He wouldn't be. He has to show that he had proper.
Yeah, but the hide, you can wash it anyway. He needs to wash it.
No.
Okay, and then the Mishnah spoke about the mulcho ve'me'abdo, the one who salts the hide and one who tans the hide. And the obvious question is, apparently they're one and the same. Haynu moleach, haynu me'abed. What's the difference between salting and tanning? It's exactly the same thing. So indeed, the answer is Rabbi Yochanan v'Reish Lakish da'amrit arvayu afik chad menayu. Remove one of them. The ayil sirtut. So indeed, salting and tanning is the same thing. So only one of them is mentioned in the Mishnah. Instead of the other one, we put in sirtut, like drawing a line. Before the tanner wants to cut the hide to a precise measure, he draws a line, misartet, and that's a labor. How do they call this in English? Sirtut? Score. Scoring. Okay. Amar Rabba bar Rav Huna, Hayman de Malach Bisra, says, obviously one who salts hide is tanning the hide. That's obviously a labor. But even one who salts meat, pieces of meat, no, just to preserve it. Kosher meat. No, the blood was already out.
Let's say you did it to extract the blood.
That's also another labor. That could be selection, because you select the blood from the meat.
You don't want the blood.
Right, exactly. So you take out the solid, the bad from the good. That's another labor. But here it talks about. Right, also schita. But here it talks about kosher meat. It was already koshered, salted. He just wants to preserve it for a long term.
Something different than two separate malachas, not something different than
No, when tanning a hide, they used to do it with salt.
They do with salt, but I'm saying there must be some additional process.
Okay, so the one needed here in the Mishnah is tanning. So tanning includes also salting. I'm sorry, I couldn't hear. Okay. Right, tanning of the hide is to preserve it, but tanning maybe takes other actions besides salting. Other process. Right. I think it also changes it because I think it a little hardens it. When you salt meat, it hardens it a little, and that's what preserves it. Like they have in South Africa, I saw biltong. It's harder meat, and it's preserved for a longer time.
It says ibud. It's working hard. You have to knead it and work it to soften it along with the salt. I don't think you just salt it and let it sit. You have to.
You have to do something besides salting it.
You have to work on it. Yes, you put it in big barrels of water, and you leave it in.
That's how they do the canning of the
I mean,
hide.
if the hairs are off, that's the important.
Yeah, but putting salt is also one of the
Yeah,
important
You have to
things.
get the hair off of it also.
Okay. So now he says that one who salts meat is also chayav mishum eved, is liable on account of like tanning, like processing meat, food. But halacha does not follow that. There's no biblical liability for that. Rava Amar, ein ibud be'ochalin. There's no tanning. Do you say tanning or in food?
no tanning.
You say, processing it or washing it or something.
Yeah, there's no tanning. There's no tanning or processing in food. Even though there's no biblical liability, there's still a rabbinic prohibition not to do it, not to salt meat if you don't need it for today, for Shabbat. If you salt pieces of meat for the sake of another day, there's a rabbinic prohibition against it. Yeah, not because of mechin, because of appears like tanning, like processing. And now it says that there are two levels of salting meat. Amar Rav Ashi, v'afilu Rabba bar Ravuna, even Rabba bar Ravuna, who forbade to salt meat, to preserve it, lo amar ela de kabay le'orcha. He only spoke about extensive salting. If one needs the pieces of meat for a long journey, then he would heavily salt it for it to be preserved for a long time. That he says is a biblical prohibition. Aval leveita, but if he does it for home consumption, so then he wouldn't do it so extensively. Lo mashveinish mechleyetz. A person would not render his food like wood, so hard. So this implies that people at home should not eat bilton. They can have softer meat. That's only for the way, for journey. Jerky. Okay, so it's good for a journey, but not at home. You can have better meat.
Biggest sellers.
Okay, ve'amemachko ve'amechatcho. Another labor, memachek, is like smoothing the hide. So Amar Rabbi Acha bar Chanina, hashaf bein ha'amudim b'Shabbat chayav mishum memachek. Even if the hide is, Rambam says the hide is like hanging on pillars, between pillars, and you smooth it there.
The shaf is to rub it.
The shafshef, right? To rub it.
To rub it on the pillow.
And that smooths it.
Cake is also a race.
Mochek. There's mochek and there's memachek. Two different things. Mochek. Oh, that's what Rashi says, but Tashbot don't understand this. It's not clear. And that's why they quote Rabbeinu Hananel, who says that he rubs the hide on the pillar. He smooths the hide. And the Rambam says that the hide is hanging on two pillars and he smooths it. So the novelty is, even though it appears like an unusual way of doing it, one is still liable for that. Now, by the way, smoothing something, memachek, there's a big dispute between the Ashkenazim and Sfaradim about this. Can you smear paste, or can you use hard soap on Shabbat? Toothpaste, or any paste on the skin, or hard soap. Ashkenazim are stringent. They say that it's a sub-category of this, memachek. Like you smooth something, you smear something, it's forbidden, toothpaste or soap. And Sfaradim are lenient.
What if I use the hard stuff? Isn't soft soap also smoothing?
So soft soap, they say, is like liquid. So if it's liquid, so it's not like smearing something.
What about using lotion?
Oh, lotion, that depends. If it's liquid or it's a paste. The definition is if you try to pour it, is it poured by itself or not? If it's something that you can pour, it's liquid. Then there's no problem in like oil, like you can.
What about Maricha?
Mericha. So that's the thing.
Maricha is not a separate.
So no, mericha is a tolada of memachek. Right. I'm sorry. Smoothing, because if you take any paste or anything that you can smear, it's like smoothing the hide. It's the same principle. Lotion.
I heard they are that even with liquid tooth cleaner, should not be allowed either.
Why?
Because the hair on the brush.
That's the brush. That's something else. But
As you do it, you create bubbles.
Bubbles. Yeah, but that's maybe there's such a stringent opinion, but acceptable opinion is that you can do. You can add it to your book. Yeah. if you want another one, there's some say not to use even a toothbrush at all, because the brush itself, you squeeze it and you extract the water from it. It's also.
But it's not it's like using a Shabbos foot.
So it's also a dispute. Can you use a toothbrush on Shabbat?
Can you exactly? Can you use a toothbrush?
A dispute.
I've heard a lot of people say.
Some say that you squeeze it and that's why you shouldn't use it. Some say it's okay.
Or brushing anything, in fact, even your clothes.
No, your clothes usually depend. I also could be a problem. Yeah, that's fine.
But that's a sauce.
Yeah, that's not a problem. You don't smear anything. You don't not spread anything. Just cleaning. Yeah, it's not a labor. אוקיי, אמר רבי חייא בר אבא, 3 דברים סח לי רב אשי או רב אסי משמי דרבי יהושע בן לוי. 3 things he told me. One is המגרה ראשי קלונסות בשבת. If you have קלונסות is like beams, and if you even straighten the top or the head of the beam, חייב משום בחתך, that person is liable for cutting. It's like cutting it for a precise measure. הממרח רטייה בשבת, חייב משום ממחק. How do they translate ממרח רטייה? A bandage. No, רטייה is a bandage. So I guess there's like dressing. So there's dressing on the bandage and he smooth it.
That's how you put it directly on.
Just put it there. That's fine.
Rashi says,
If you,
yeah,
machlik, smooth it.
Is that, are we talking about that you're doing it on purpose? Because should we say, for example, you put some of the ointment on your hand and you took it off and you pressed it
right,
down,
if you don't smooth it, no problem.
Right,
just to put it there, it's fine. But to smooth it, that's the labor. והמסתת את האבן, that chiseling it's called?
Yes.
When it chisels the stone, בשבת חייב משום מכה בפטיש. The liability here is the last labor, almost the last one. מכה בפטיש, that's anything you finish. The finish is called מכה בפטיש. So you chisel the stone, you finish the shape of the stone, that's מכה בפטיש. אמר רבי שמעון בן קיסמא, or according to the back, רבי שמעון בן מיסנא, אמר רבי שמעון בן לקיש, הצר צורה בכלי. Let's say they have this like a glass vessel and you paint on it something. Engrave or paint. Whatever you do this thing on the vessel. Decorate it. If you blow a glass vessel, you give it its shape. Chayav mishum makeh b'fatish. The liability here also is makeh b'fatish. Anything you finish to do, the finish is makeh b'fatish. And also Amar Rabbi Yehuda, ha'iman deshakil akufei miglimei. Chayav mishum makeh b'fatish v'animilei dekapid alayu. When there's a new robe, a new coat, a new garment, and sometimes there's some leftover threads or some even splinters on it. If you remove that and you're particular, you care about it, so that's the finish of the garment.
What happens if you see
Lint?
fluff?
That's what it's saying, man.
No. Here it talks about a new garment that you never used. The first time you prepare it for use, so you finish the shape of the garment. If you're particular, if you care about this and you remove it, that's like finishing enabling to wear it. That's makeh b'fatish.
It's only for that person. Somebody else might not care.
Right. It says that's why it says the condition only if you're particular, if you care about it, for you to labor. If you don't care, it doesn't matter.
No, so Rashi says it's compassion to someone, to do toward the Lord.
Yeah, some leftover things. Right?
Even though the garment is finished.
Yeah, it's finished, but it's not yet so nice because there are these things, so you remove them to make it nicer. Okay, and now the labor of writing is a minimum of 2 letters. If one writes only 1 letter, there's no liability. Tanu Rabbanan, katav ot achat gdola. If one wrote a large letter, v'yesh bimkoma lichtov shtayim, even though it's so large that you used so much ink and so much space that could have written 2 letters, still patur. Because there's no liability for writing only 1 letter, regardless of its size, of the amount of ink you use. Must be two letters. To two people? Dear so and so. No, letter is not a whole letter. One letter.
Letter of the alphabet.
No, we're now in emails. We're not no letters anymore. It's just one letter.
Email today.
Yeah. In the Mishkan, on the beams of the Mishkan, they used to write a letter to can tell which beam should be like the next one. So they wrote like Aleph Bet, Aleph on one, Bet on the other, so they know that you can join them together. You can say the Aleph Bet.
They only wrote one letter on each.
One letter on each.
So you're allowed.
Yeah, so biblically, one letter is not, there's no liability for writing just one letter, because the purpose of writing those letters was the combination of two letters to tell which two beams are next to one another.
I always thought that one letter is not a word. You need two letters to make a word.
Yeah, but I'm not sure if it's because of that. Sometimes, actually, there's a dispute in the Mishnah later. Sometimes they used to have one letter, like an acronym, which everybody understood is like a word. Taf is like Truma, Mem is like Maaser. So, so here there's a difference between the liability for writing and liability for erasing. Machak, ot gdola, if one erased a large letter, ויש במקומה לכתוב שתיים, but it was so large that now you created space to write two letters, chayav. In this one is liable. Right, because the labor of erasing does not depend on the number of letters. It depends on the space you make for writing new two letters. Right, so that's why. So according to the Rosh, even if you did not erase even a letter, let's say that there's some ink spilled on a parchment, and you just scratch that ink and make space for two letters, you're liable also.
And if you only make space
For what? For
space for one letter,
no liability. Mochek is only liable if he erases enough space for two letters. But it does not need to erase letters. It can erase anything. Anything you erase and make room for writing two letters, there's liability.
if you do it in two separate acts,
One space for one letter and then another space for another letter. So it's like depends. If it's in one lapse of unawareness, they combine. If you knew in between, so no liability.
What happened to write the whole Bible on the pinhead?
Yeah. אמר רבי מנחם ברבי יוסי, וזה חומר במוחק מבכותיו. Here we found a stringency in eraser more than in the writer, because the one who erases does not need to erase necessarily two letters to be liable, and the one who writes must write at least two letters to be liable. הבונה והשוטר, the one who builds, the one who demolishes, המכבה, the one who extinguishes, והמבעיר, kindles, והמכה בפטיש. So Rabba ורבי זיירא, the Amr Tarvai, they both said, כל מידי דאית בגמר מלאכה, anything that involves the finishing of manufacturing, of doing something, חייב משום מכה בפטיש, one is liable for final blow, right? That's the punchline. Okay, the Mishnah says, Elu avot melechot, these are the primary labors, and the word these are comes to exclude Elu le'afukei mid Rabbi Eliezer de mechayev al tolada bimkom av. That's a basic dispute. According to Rabbi Eliezer, if one performs one primary and one secondary labor in one lapse of unawareness, one is liable to two chatat offerings. So according to him, there's almost no limit to the number of chataot one could be liable in one Shabbat. It's over 1,500. It's 39 times 39. The Yerushalmi says each primary one has 39 sub labors. So I think it's 1,500 and something, right? So that's according to him. But our Mishnah says no, Elu, only for these primary labors one could be liable, because if you do a primary labor together with a secondary labor, you're only liable to one. So the maximum number of chataot in one Shabbat would be 39. 1521. Oh, yeah.
Because Rabbi Eliezer that we're talking about here is Rabbi Eliezer he was a student of the
Beit Shammai.
So
He's more stringent. Yeah. And then it says chaser achat. The Mishnah says 40 minus 1. 39 labors, and this is to exclude La'afuke mid Rabbi Yehuda. According to Rabbi Yehuda, there are more than 39 labors. The Tanya Rabbi Yehuda mosif et hashovet ve'medakdek. I couldn't guess what these words in English are. Shovet, lining up. The wood. Whatever that means. Okay. And the sages do not agree that these are two separate labors because they say they're included in the list we already have. Amrula, they told him, Shovet areu bichlal meisech. That's like lining up the tree. Yeah, the problem is I do not have 74b diagram. Uh-huh. I just don't, yeah, I just do not have this volume of Art Scroll, so I can't. Yeah, 74b 2. Okay. So when the Mishnah says אמרו לה שובת הרי בכלל מייסך, מדקדק הרי בכלל הורג, so they're included in the Mishnah. Okay, so now we got to the next Mishnah. ועוד כלל אחר, אמרו, another general rule. From now on, the Mishnah, in the end of this chapter and the next chapter, is dealing with just different amounts of different objects, for which amount is one liable for taking it out from a private domain to a public domain, and so on. So another general rule they said, anything that is fit to be stored, which is important enough for people to store it, when the amount, its measure, is large enough for people to store it, if one took it out on Shabbat, so that's an important object for which one is liable. But anything which is not fit to be stored, people do not use it, don't care about this. Or even if it's something that people care about, but if the amount is so little that people do not pay attention to it, if somebody did take it out on Shabbat, so here it becomes subjective. If for you it's important, you're liable. But another person for whom it's not important is not liable for that.
What are we talking about, going into the public domain?
Yeah, from private domain to a public domain, or within a public domain for amot.
That's something else. What does that do with storage? You go from a private to a public domain, you're already liable, no?
No, only if you carry something important. If let's say if you take a piece of dust, carry it from a private domain to a public domain, you're not liable. Right, midoraita. Rabbinically, you shouldn't carry anything. But the liability for carrying something from private domain to public domain only applies to something significant, something that important enough. And now there's a whole list in the following Mishnayot that gives different objects. What's the minimum amount that people care about?
Is there a share for
Muktzeh? No. Here the question is not muktzeh. Here the question is
I'm asking, is there a share
for muktzeh? No. Anything that you distract your mind from is muktzeh. And now there's a dispute. Talking about kol kasher le'atzniya, anything fit to be stored. What does it come to exclude? What is something which is not fit to be stored? So that's a dispute. One opinion is Rav Papa Amar le'afukei dam nida blood. That's something that people would not store.
A lot of things I wouldn't store. I don't know why to bring that up.
Nowadays, but in those times, people stored anything valuable they would store. But this, even average people would not store. That's what Rav Papa said. But Maruk v'amar le'afukei atzei ashera. Ashera wood, which is idolatrous thing, forbidden for benefit. Obviously, people would not store that. Yeah, of course. So that's unanimous. All agree that atzei ashera is something not storable. Man de'amar dam nida, the one who spoke about dam nida, kol sheken atzei ashera. Obviously, ashera wood is unanimous. All agree that people do not store that. But man de'amar atzei ashera, the one who says that atzei ashera is not something people would store. Aval dam nida matna lei. nida blood they would store. Why? Leshunra. Cats can eat it. So if you own a cat, you want to give it some nice dessert, they'll eat that blood. They'll be happy to drink that blood. Give it a try. So the one who says that if it's so important and cats like it, so why don't all agree that people would store it? The thing is, the rule is that if a cat eats a person's blood, that person becomes weak. So that's why some say that
When they use the word store, what do you mean? You would protect it, or you would put
you'd
it
keep
away?
it. No, keep it. You wouldn't throw it away.
So I could take out the garbage. That's not a problem.
The garbage that you would throw anyway. But I guess in the garbage you could find things that.
I'm not storing anything in the garbage.
Good question. What about garbage that you wouldn't?
Take it out on the garbage.
You would throw it away anyway. It's not important.
It might be important for somebody else who searches in the garbage, but for me,
So if it's something objectively important, so then you should be liable for it.
only to the minority of people.
Yeah, but I think nowadays you can find in any garbage something that you could use for something.
Yes, for storage, whatever.
For children to do something, a piece of.
You're not putting it away. You're not guarding it, so you're not storing it.
No, but then it doesn't matter. It's if it's something that's considered important. Let's say even a small piece of paper.
That's value.
It's considered valuable. So for that you're liable.
There's no limit.
Yeah. No, there is a limit. If it's
So
something.
now that you're separating out garbage,
I mean, people can find use for almost anything. A rock, a menstrual blood, anything.
Exactly. Yeah. Right.
Last
Right.
year's newspaper. I can read it.
Yeah. So almost anything is considered valuable. But nowadays we throw so much things that we forgot about the value of. Okay. ואמר רבי יוסי בר חנינא, היי דלא כרבי שמעון. This Mishnah is not according to רבי שמעון, דהי כרבי שמעון, האמר לא אמרו כל השיעורים הללו אלא למצניען. רבי שמעון says that these measurements that are mentioned in the Mishnah only refer to those who store these things. Our Mishnah holds that even a person, let's say a rich person, who would throw these things to the garbage is liable for taking out these things that are valuable for other people. So that's
subjective, it's not subjective.
right. So that's the dispute, if it's an objective prohibition or subjective. And maybe we consider the following thing. Amar Rabbi Elazar, when the Mishnah says v'chol she'eino kasher le'atzniya, so Amar Rabbi Elazar, ha delo Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar. This Mishnah that says that if only the one who stored something is liable for that thing which for him is important, but other people are not liable for that, that's not according to Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar. The Tanya, Klal Amar Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar, kol she'eino kasher le'atzniya, anything which is not fit to be stored, something completely insignificant. Ve'en matzniin kamo, and people do not store it. Ve'uchshar lezav yasniu, and somebody had a crazy idea and he wants this to be important and he stored it. And somebody else came and took it out. So the other person becomes liable because of the intention of the owner. So according to Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar, the owner determines the importance of his object. Our Mishnah holds that it's objective. If it's something that nobody considers important, even if somebody considers it important, only for himself it's important, but not for other people.
That's more logical. There should be like
Right.
something across the board.
Okay, so that's a dispute. Halacha follows our Mishnah that only the person who stored it, if it's for him it's important, he's liable, but others are not. It's a subjective thing. Yeah, in something insignificant that only one person cares about, so for him he's liable. No, not like Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar. Halacha follows our Mishnah. הוא גם מניין, רב חנניה בן הקשיא אומר, רצה הקדוש ברוך הוא לזכות ישראל וכך הרבה להם תורה ומצוות, שנאמר, אדוני חפץ למען צדקו, יגדיל תורה ויאדיר.